Hello, and welcome to Your Vote Counts, a public service program for the Special District's May 18th election that is being produced by Capital Community Media via remote technology and in collaboration with the community groups of the American Association of University Women, the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk Counties, and the Salem City Club. For the Salem Keizer School Board election, all candidates were invited and all accepted. The candidate was asked to prepare a 2-minute opening statement telling about themselves and their qualifications for the elected position. I'm Toma Gadu with the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk Counties, and I'd like to introduce Kari Zohner, running for School Board Zone 1, who will now begin with her opening statement.
Hi, Tomika. Thank you so much for having me. My name's Kari Zohner, and I'm running for School Board District Zone 1 for Salem Keizer. And I am a born and raised Salem Keizer School District person. I was born in Salem and I was raised in Keizer. I'm going to school from Cummings all the way to McNary High School. And I have been in the district my entire life. I have 2 kids currently in the district who are 16 and 14, and I reside in West Salem. My background is I have been a coach in the district off and on for 20 plus years. I have also been a restricted substitute teacher in the district when we did not have enough substitute teachers to fill the void. I stepped up with my bachelor's degree and was able to teach in the district. And then I also a little bit more about me. I come from a public service family. I have a husband who's in law enforcement. I've lived in Salem and Keizer off and on for almost 40 years. I did move away briefly, living in Denver, Colorado. So that's a little bit about my history. I believe that I am qualified because I know what's happening in our schools. I'm a mother, I'm a parent, and I'm a concerned citizen. And I've seen where the gaps are and how I can help. And it was important for me to step up and try to make a difference for our kids. And so with that, I'm a mom and I'm passionate and I'm ready to make a difference.
Thank you for that information, Kari. Now let's move on to some questions. Okay. The questions were developed by the sponsoring groups, and the candidates did not receive them ahead of time. 7 questions have been prepared, and each candidate has 9 minutes in which to answer them. Not all questions need to be answered, but all candidates will be given the same questions and the same 9 minutes total time, which includes the time it takes to ask the question or repeat a question. The candidates' responses to the individual questions will not be timed. And now let's give Kari an opportunity to address some questions and topics of concern to our community. Turning to our first question, if you're elected, Kari, in what areas of the school board responsibilities are you particularly interested?
My biggest interest is in hearing the needs and assessing the needs of all kids in our district. We have some educational gaps and some gaps that need to be addressed. We need to look at transparency and communication with families and with students. My biggest concern is we need to get our kids back to school 5 days a week. We have fallen behind the rest of the district or the rest of the country in regards to getting our kids back to school. We need to get our SROs back into our schools. It's extremely important that those SROs provide security and mentorship for many students. And then finally, I would like to bring back some pride to our schools. Our kids are tested. The rigor of just being tested has really worn down our students. We need to look at how we can connect our kids. We need them to be connected to our schools and to feel pride in being there.
What effects do you think it will have to elect school board members by zone rather than at large?
I've been asked that question before. I think there's two ways to look at it. Considering someone like me who's been in the district and has grown up in Salem Keizer schools, and have coached or have some sort of other responsibilities within the district, my connections are vast. So I've been able to make connections across the board and across the school area. So all across Salem and Keizer, I have connections. So that one's a little personal for me, because I think that when you want to bring diversity or you want to bring understanding to the board, it doesn't matter if it's in one zone or across the school district. We should be able to elect the person that the people want there. And so I feel we should actually look at all districts, all zones across the entire district for voting. I don't think it should be restricted just to where you are geographically living.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In several places in the district policy for the school board, it states that there's to be regular opportunities for public feedback. How is this ensured, and what would you do differently, if anything?
I think the difficulty this year in particular has been difficult with having to be Zoom meetings and not in person. I think that that's been a struggle because we've had connectivity issues. We've had feedback issues where we've had to go in and out of the meetings in the ones that I've have been attending over Zoom. I think it's extremely important to listen to our community members, our families, and our students. And I would encourage us to continue to reach out and get them on board and attending as many meetings as possible, so that we can hear from them and their feedback. So I'm hoping we will be in person coming the next year.
Now let's explore what you think about the decision to skip standardized testing this year.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry, I missed the beginning.
I'm wondering what you think about the decision to skip standardized testing this year.
Well, again, as a mom and having two kids in the district, I will tell you that testing's basically going to tell our district that our kids haven't learned very much this last year. Our kids are incredibly behind. I think testing just adds another layer of stress to our kids at this point, because they've basically had 2 days a week of learning in front of a computer. I would have opted my kids out of testing. I don't think it would have proven anything other than our kids haven't learned much this year.
What steps would you take to address the disparities in academic performance before the pandemic and now as we transition to in-school instruction?
I think that one of the most difficult things is to really take a hard look at disparities in our schools. I think sometimes, especially community members, don't want to look at disparities. There are disparities. There are large disparities, and there have been off and on for many years. I think that unfortunately, what we're seeing now with kids being at home, I think that actually affects and impacts our most vulnerable students the most. Our homeless youth, our foster kids, our kids that don't have families at home to help them through their school day. So I believe that the pandemic has actually hurt our most vulnerable students the most. And that's why I'm advocating for schools to be back in session 5 days a week.
With local law enforcement contracts ended, how will the areas of concern that they addressed now be handled?
That's a great question. I think that many people want to believe that it's easy to replace a law enforcement officer. I will tell you firsthand, it's not. SROs in our schools provide mentorship. They provide a safe place. They also recognize when trauma is occurring to somebody. They can recognize abuse. They can recognize suicidalities. They can recognize a lot of things in our children. And I honestly don't know how the school expects to handle that. I will be pushing to get SROs back in our district. We actually had an independent task force of students that were diverse and that spoke their mind in regards to getting our SROs and to keep them in our school district. And unfortunately, our superintendent did not listen to that. So I would like to understand better why she didn't choose to listen to the students that were on that task force. So I don't really have a great answer for that at this point. I think we need to look at getting them back first and foremost. But if that's not something that the public is willing to look at, then we will have to handle that with putting services out. And honestly, I think that will stretch our teachers and our administrators quite far and farther than they probably would like.
Our school budget has faced monetary issues due to the pandemic, fires, houselessness, technology. What do you propose for meeting these financial challenges?
I think that's a fairly large question. There are a number of factors going into budget issues, one of which is many people have pulled their kids out of public school. They have chosen other options like homeschooling, private schools, primarily because those students are in school. Ours are not. When you have less kids in school, you have less funding. We need to engage. We need to connect our families. We need to connect our kids. We need to connect them back into our public school system so that they feel welcome and needed. When the numbers come up, the budget comes up because we get more funding that way. So I think that this is a larger question. And I do think that we need to look at how we can connect and include more people into the discussion.
Thank you for that, Kari. We now invite you to share some of your closing remarks.
Thank you. I think in closing, the one thing that I want to make sure everybody understands is I'm passionate about kids. I'm passionate about families, and I'm passionate about fixing a broken system. We need to improve and we need to do better. You know, our kids are left behind. They're not listened to. We have divisiveness like I've never seen before. We have a lack of connectedness that kids are feeling left out. We need to bring pride back in our schools. We need families and kids excited to learn again. I don't think that we have a culture that encourages kids to be excited to be at school. We are testing them constantly. They've lost that will to learn for the love of learning. And I think that we need to get back to that. I promise to leave politics out of the school board. I think we've seen divisiveness in politics come into most of our life over the last year, especially. And I'm exhausted. Families are exhausted. We're tired. I don't want to bring politics into the school board. I want to bring lives back to the school. I want kids with energy. I want happiness. I want to hear kids playing on the playground. I will focus on kids. I will work to increase transparency and communication. I'll get our kids back to school 5 days a week, and I will promise you to have the conversation of getting our SROs back in the school. My first and my last comment is about pride. We need to bring pride back to our schools. We need to be happy to be there, and we need to lift every single student. All kids matter, every single voice, and we need to lift them with pride and help them rise up.
Thank you, Kari, for our interview today and sharing your thoughts. Thanks to Capital Community Media for the extensive efforts made to make this program happen. And thank you, the public, for watching in order to become a more informed voter. Remember to vote by May 18th because your vote counts.